Hello, this is Paper Cuts Included coming to you live from the Ninja Turtle Sleeping Blanket, and that's how you know it's legit. Today we're going to be continuing our Turtle Tuesday look through, where each Tuesday of July we're going to be looking at a issue of Eastman and Laird's TMNT from the first run. Before we get into that, if you're new to the channel, this is a comic book YouTube channel ran by me and my co-host. We're all working artists and inspired by the great cartoonist Kayfabe and want to talk about comic books. If you're interested in what it takes to be a comic book artist or what makes a comic book a good comic book in the year 2025, well, you're in the right place. We get books like these, put it under the microscope, and talk about the art, the artist, the impact of the book, what makes it good, what makes the artist good, and really get into the nitty and gritty of what it takes to be a comic book artist. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, stick around. Hit the subscribe, hit the notification. We post many videos a week, maybe too many sometimes, but definitely stick around. So, like I said, we are going to be continuing our Turtle Tuesday look. We are actually going with Return to New York Book 2. If you haven't seen the video book part 1, because this is a trilogy, there's a book 1, of course. Definitely go check it out. It was real interesting. We get to see layered ink, which I feel is a little unheard of. So that's cool to see. This one is actually inked by just had it a while ago. Eric Talbot. His inking's not my favorite, I should say. So for some context, if you didn't watch the first video, this was the very first Ninja Turtle book I ever bought. Well, actually, it was both of these. It was book 1 and book 2. I got it at a comic convention called SpaCon. It's in Hot Springs, Arkansas. It's a really good con. If you're in the area, definitely go check it out. And I just saw these books and knew I had to have them, mostly for the cover. I guess we can get into that in a second. And I read them at the con. I was actually set up at the con with my friend as an artist. Didn't really pan out that well. We were just selling art, not comic book art, and didn't go great. But that's a story for a different day. And the covers alone made me get them, and I read them while I was there and fell in love with them, and that's what made me start getting into the Ninja Turtles comic-wise, both the original run, the newer IDW series, not this newest one, but the one before, or I guess they're the same thing now, or something weird, right? So there was that, and I was really excited to look at this issue again, because Zog is the name of the character on the cover. He's one of my favorite characters. He's a Triceraton, which is an alien Triceratops. As someone's whose favorite movie of all time is Jurassic Park, it's really cool to have a, giant Triceratops. Ink, well, I guess we'll get into just a second, but I was really disappointed rereading it. The story's great, but the art just seemed to drop off a lot from book 1 to book 2, and I think a lot of that has to do with the inks. Now, it is not a bad book by any means, but I was just a little disappointed, and maybe that's good. Usually I fanboy out about books, so it'll be pretty cool to, I guess, dissect what kind of turned me off of it a little bit. And I'm not saying Eric Talbot's a bad inker. It just wasn't me, right? Wasn't my style. So let's get into it. Beautiful cover. The inks on this one's actually layered. So he inked the cover. The pencils are, of course, Eastman. Let's see who colored it. Levine. Steve Levine, another longtime Mirage worker. But no. So I really like the cover. Probably one of my most, this image is burned into my mind. So much so I bought the NECA Mirage Triceraton figure, which I would get him down, but he's on the top shelf. And I don't feel like getting him down. And you're here for comic books, not expensive toys. So let's open it and just kind of get into it. Great little splash. I think each one starts with a splash. Let's see if book 1 starts with a splash. And maybe So we can already tell the difference between the inking between Laird and Talbot. I guess you can't see it too much. There it is. Maybe not a whole lot, but I feel like Talbot, he throws the ink a lot more than Laird does. Laird is much more restrictive with his inking. Like you can see, there's whole spots where there's barely any. You can't really say that with Talbot, which is not a bad thing. It just, at times, and I feel like it's mostly with Zog. The turtles look really fine. Zog kind of gets lost. So we'll talk about more about that. I still think this is a great splash page. Um, you know, this was one of those books. The first time I read it, I wanted to draw Zog like nonstop. I still need to. I've never finished a Zog drawing. Maybe I'll do that. I'm working on a dinosaur book right now, actually. We might do a video on that soon. So really cool splash page. This is how you do a splash page. Open your book with a splash page. Can get people real interested. Or I guess not splash. But no, the story so far is this is the story of the turtles coming back from the farmhouse. If you haven't caught the story, Shredder came back, kicked the turtles' butts. They had to go hide out in Northampton, which is this rural farm community. And now they're fed up and are finally back in New York. That's why it's called Return to New York. In the first issue, excuse me, in the first issue, we meet at the end this creature named Zog, who is a Triceraton. Triceratons, I'm about to cough again. I think I have a sunflower seed kernel stuck in the back of my throat. Ooh. Zog is a Triceraton. Triceratons are Ninja Turtle characters. They're these alien Triceratops who go around the galaxy conquering planets, and they're a fun little villain to draw. They're fun, they're a staple. They're really cool. And Zog here is actually a remnant from their very first attacking of the turtles, and it turns out that he's gone crazy because he can't. The oxygen on Earth, I guess, is too little, too rich, however that science works, and it's literally eating his brain. So he's going crazy because he's losing his brain every second he's there, because every breath he takes makes his brain deteriorate more and more. Although, why is he not attacking the turtles? Because they are turtle villains? Well, he's gone so crazy that he thinks the turtles are actually his superiors, and Raph can kind of control him a little bit. Really cool art, though. I love Zog's character design. The turtles, I think, have one of the best character designs in all of history. Like, their villains, their characters, just very iconic. Oh, I forgot to move that down. My apologies. But very just very stocky characters. It's a teenage boy's dream, right? A Triceratops fighter. There you go. So I just think it's really cool. Really cool. Like scenes of the sewer. Not as great as the first issue, where in the first issue we had, and I guess now we can show the inking a little more. Let me find a sewer scene. Here's a good one. Like here, this is from book one. The bricks are pretty clean, right? It's just a brick wall. And maybe the argument would be, well, I guess I should show the other one first. Whereas Talbot's inking process, is that Duotone or Zipatone? The bricks are really dirty. There's a lot of shading, a lot of inking, and I guess that could be the argument: is it's a sewer, it's supposed to be dirty. But just rereading the first issue, then reading this one, it's a really jarring change of inking, right? It was something I noticed right away. So it's just, A, it's interesting to see how one artist inks something versus the other. B, it's, I prefer Laird's inking, I think, a lot more than Talbot's, and I can say why. Laird's, I think, is a lot more restrictive, a lot more refined, whereas Talbot and Eastman, when he inks, just throw ink on the page, but it makes it very energetic, very Outlaw Comics. However, it's just not for me sometimes. Eastman I can get with because he's Eastman. I love Eastman. I studied his art for a long time. Probably should do more. Whereas Talbot, not my favorite, but still great art. This channel's not for crapping on artists. I'm sure, there's my co-host is probably going to call me and be like, why did you say that about Talbot's artwork? I'm not saying he's a bad artist at all. He's a great artist. I suck at inking. My inking looks like chicken scratch. Just not for me. And it's cool to see the differences. We're also seeing how they utilize the character of Zog. Drawing him in all these different scenes. Because that's something, as a comic book artist, you have to figure out. Is how are your characters going to stand in this position? What's their head going to look like down? What's going to look like from the side? So your warm-up sketches, when you're doing a comic book, probably should be your characters in all these different positions if you don't know. I suck at drawing people sitting down. So here lately, the Fantastic Four movie is going to come out next week. I've been trying to draw a Marvel character a day for an Inktober project that I'm starting early. So I've been trying to draw Reed Richards sitting down a lot. So my warm-up sketches are a lot of crotches right now. I'm trying to figure out how that anatomy works at times. And that's something you could do in your own artwork. So no, Zog, he's rambling. He doesn't have clear speech. Really cool way to show that his brain's deteriorating. He sounds like a madman. We don't really know what he's doing, although we're about to figure it out. He finds they're just in the sewers and they break into a foot headquarters. But before we talk about that, this might be one of my favorite panels. It's kind of what they're above walking, and I just like the or yeah. So here it is. They're right here, and here's the water. And I really like how there's a random alligator, a skeleton, a fish. It That's what makes I really like seeing that in comics, seeing the ambiance, the backgrounds. People not just drawing sterile backgrounds. This easily could have just been a solid watercolor like that shading, but instead they throw in an alligator, bubbles. I That's something that makes a book stand out to me more than a book that doesn't, and it gets me to want to reread books like that. So now we're cutting into Zog, and now we can also see how Talbot shades the turtles in this one. Uh, like I said, Eastman's very, you know, like the turtles look so much cleaner, and I guess one of the bigger difference, the bandanas are colored, right? They're not colored here, and so again, it's just cool how to see how people ink and others don't, you know. And I think one of the things about the inking is it's so dark, so outlaw comicsy that sometimes the action gets a little lost on me. It's a black and white book, and I think the inking kind of hurts it in a way at times here. Like some of these panels, I had to reread a couple times to really get the point. It'll get a little shaky near the end. Still great artwork, but just I get lost, and I'm sure other people do too. So when you're inking, figure out how you want to ink. Most of all, don't ink every page a different way. Figure out what works, what doesn't, what works for you. What do you like? What do others like? That doesn't mean do what others like, because if you love the way you ink, do it the way you want. But definitely find a style, stick with that style. It is a lot of hatching across hatching though, and I love seeing crossing and hot. Blah, I just had a mini stroke in a comic. So it. I just think it's a little too much. Also, just saw Superman tonight. Probably gonna do a audio only video on my thoughts on it. Spoiler, thought it was great, but we'll talk about more of it later. So back to your daily programming. But here, like, the shading's fine, right? The inking, it's not overpowering like I think the other panel is. Like here, for some reason, I just can't get with all that dark, all that just pure ink, right? Where here, it's very, and it's probably the use of Zipatone, and that might be Eric Talbot, figuring out Zipatone more and more. And, we'll probably, I'm sure now I'm going to do a comparison between this and maybe one of his later works. And I don't know much about Eric Talbot, so that'll be a fun video. But like I said, here the inking is not a problem for me. And a comic book, you're going to learn a lot. And this, he probably could have learned a lot while making this book. So the Turtles and Zog break into this compound. They hack into a system. They find out that the Foot Clan has this giant headquarters now right there. And so they're going to figure out how to attack it. They're going to, Donnie's doing classic Donnie things, setting up diversions to get, the least resistance. And off they go. We're not going to spend time talking about the pros and cons. There's no giant monologue here. It's a very straightforward comic. And usually the Turtles are very straightforward. You know, that's one of the things I love about them. And that's something you should do in a comic at times. Don't overbear your audience with, well, let me tell you the 10,001 ways the sacred chicken's gonna beat the horrible panda, long time ago. Don't do that. People are gonna put your book down. Like, put, have talking scenes, but don't make them overbearing. If people are going to read a book, not a comic book, if they want dialogue heavy stuff, right? Whereas here, we're already back to the, we're about to fight more Foot Clan. What more could you want? Really cool city scene, whiteout over the page, probably to represent snow. I love it when a comic book artist uses whiteout to just have snow. It's one of my guilty pleasures, I think, in a comic book is seeing a comic book artist do that. So, it's really noticeable on the Sin City Silent Night cover. I'll put a photo of it up here. I just love it. I love it when a comic book artist uses whiteout. I think I like it a little too much. But no, the turtles with that Zipatone are so dark here. Like they're just, I don't know. I really like Eastman's or not Laird's inking the way he did it. Or I guess the combination of who did the art, because it's Lawson. It's Lawson, and it might be all three, but different inker. I wonder who inks the last one. We'll have to look at that in a little bit. But no, so again, just the inking, the Zipatone is just weird for me. But here's when they get into the Zog's actually, he's dying, right? He's a ticking time bomb. So something's gonna happen in this book. You don't tell, the reader that, and then he's gonna walk away free Triceratops at the end of the issue, right? Is he going to turn on the turtles? Is he going to just fall and die with the lack of oxygen? Oh no, he goes out a lot worse than that. And it's sad. I was so bummed out that this character, when I first read it, spoiler alert, dies at the end of this book. It really hurt me. He usually does die. He popped up in the 2012 cartoon, and he also dies in the same episode. Pretty gruesomely. He just falls from some giant tower, and you just hear the giant Cathud, like, lets himself fall because he doesn't want to team up with the turtles. And poor Zog. I guess he will always have the fate of the Triceraton who has to get killed in the comic. But I think here, this panel, that really black mixed with the black right there, it just a little too much black overload. I think it hurts the panel. It just gets lost. I think if the borders were more pronounced, maybe that would help it. But it's not working for me. I think panels just start to get lost on each other, and it muddies up the reading experience. It kind of, I wouldn't say frustrates me, but it's like, why I can't get the artwork as much as I want to. And I guess that does infuriate. Maybe because I liked this book so much my first read through, getting that disappointment now is just kind of you know? Like, this was my favorite issue because it's Zog and I love Zog. But no, really good profile of Zog. Again, figure out how your character is going to stand, figure out their body language. Really cool ways you can do it, and it sells your book more if you understand your character's body language. I know that might sound crazy, but speaking of Superman, Frank quietly does an amazing job at the body language of Superman. We did a whole video on that, one of our first ever videos, actually, so go check it out. And he really knows how to draw body language, especially Clark Kent compared to Superman. How do you sell that they're two different characters but the same person, but two totally different personalities? Body language. So figure out how your characters walk, talk. Not all of your characters are going to stand the same way. Some are going to slouch, some are going to stand up, tip, straight, in between. So figure that out. Here, I really like the inking. The lasers lighting the area up. Really cool. And the turtles look really cool. That harsh black outline over them, I like a lot. The turtles, I don't think ever have the problem of getting lost in the panel because they're just straight Zipatone. Whereas Zog, I think, has so much hatching and cross hatching that he does, and I hate that for him. But no, the turtles are breaking into the Shredder's super compound. Um, you know, they're here to beat the Shredder again. He kicked their butt, so they're back for revenge. So they're already, trying to be ninjas. We're gonna sneak in quietly. Well, Zog, long live the Republic, and starts a huge fight. The whole cliche of let's go quiet, and then boom, something bad happens. Well, something bad happened already, right? They fight him pretty quick. You might think the fighting's over, right? Well, no. But before that, just look at the Zipatone use on the turtles. I really like Zipatone. I find that or I found that you can still buy some, but it's like manga stickers. Apparently, they still use it in manga art. So I'm definitely gonna have to check it out. We'll probably do a video of me using it if that sounds interesting. So stick around for that one. But no, we can see the difference between the hatching and the zipatone. The boxes are zipatone and the shadows are hatching, and like you can tell the difference, right? And of course you can, but in regards to, Zog's going to have a lot of hatching, whereas the turtles are going to have a lot of zipatone. And you can kind of tell how much of a difference that can be just in a shadow compared to a box. And I think you maybe can hopefully start to understand why I think there's too much hatching and cross hatching. It's because it's so much of a shade difference between this and that it it's like night and day. And I think that just kind of disrupts the flow. What I mean by flow is your audience is going to read in a very linear path, and if you put a little roadblock there, it might disrupt their whole enjoyment of the book. It kind of did for me. So, look at your book, see what works, what doesn't, get people to read it before you print it. I'm not saying this is a bad book at all. My critiques of it are critiques as an artist looking in and learning from it, right? Because I suck at shading, so I have to learn how to shade better. And seeing books like these, it's like, oh, okay. Because I'm really bad about over shading. I think that's another reason I'm so critical right now, is I see this on myself. And I think this is the most critical I've ever been on a book on this channel, so I'm trying not to just overdo it completely. But no, actually, did they do that really cool thing? No, okay, never mind. I guess it's coming up. But no, they think there's gonna be no more foot. They walk into a damn training room, right? And my friend has so many foot soldiers, like the NECA ones. He has so many of like the training one. I hate that figure. I don't like that look. Give me classic foot. Also, like the pages look weird. This book had water damage, not from me, but from the previous owner. So, but it's not horrible. So yeah, they walk in and look, you can see the difference between the zipatone and just looks like he stippled, probably stippled or just threw ink. And again, that harsh difference, it's night and day to me. I don't know. It's just, now I just want to do a deep dive into Eric Talbot and see if how he improves his inking. Just, was this his first book he inked? But no, your classic really cool fight scene between the turtles. They're fighting the foot, back to true form. Something really cool. They poke the eyes of the foot, and I've always wondered if those were glass or plastic. Well, they can be broke. Just cool. Really cool action scene and not stagnant. That's another thing you can get from a turtle book, is how to not be stagnant. And here, we get that with pretty interesting panel work. Probably not as strong as the first book, because the first book had just really cool symmetrical page layouts, like even with these weird panels. Whereas this one does seem a little more chaotic. The layouts are still done by Kevin Eastman. He did the first book, so I don't know what's going on. They're fighting the foot. Zog's also fighting, but he's firing a laser, so it's a little, unfair. This page confused me. I had to look at this page for like 5 minutes of rereading this tonight. So here to here is one big panel, or just a splash, right? And they put in the panels, in the middle to break it up. I thought this would lead to this, and I didn't know how that staff became that his side, but no, it's this panel leads, there to there to there to there. Yeah, and that's it. And even looking at it again, I'm still confused on, wait a second, how the hell does, and it doesn't connect, but it's so that again, maybe I'm the only person getting a little disrupted by this page, but it completely ruined the flow of this page to me, is that weird panel layout. And panel layout is something you gotta figure out. And maybe this makes sense in Kevin Eastman's head when he did the layout for this page. It just doesn't to me. Really cool shots. Like every panel's cool. It just together really congested to me. And even like somewhat here is there's so much panel and not a lot of breathing room. I just feel like let me try to find whereas like this is book 1. There's so much breathing room. I think it to go from a lot of breathing room to claustrophobic, it, it just disrupted the reading for me, right? Like reading book 1, very open air, very, limited shading to go to this, it's jarring, and I'm interested how book 3 looks now as a reread. So, you know, I think if it was all the same, right? And maybe that was the plan, and Laird just couldn't ink it. Maybe they're doing some court drama at the time. Um, I don't know, but I wish they would have stuck with one person or the other. Either keep Talbot and do all 3, or maybe he wasn't even around for the first book and the Mirage Studio timeline. I don't know. I'm gonna have to do some research on that now. But no, now they find a van. They're gonna ride it to the next part. Um, the next page I think is real funny. Donnie's quoting the Charge of the Light Brigade, this famous story of all these cavalry, people on swords. I think in World War One, going, and a lot of them, like 600 rode in, but I think less than 20 rode out, and just so fun little gimmick right there. This I quoted so much, or didn't quote, but would point out to one of my former friends. This foot have machine guns and are trying to shoot him, and it was funny. He was like, "That's not cowabunga," and I laughed pretty hard at that one because I didn't know the Foot Clan would just randomly have guns. They fought the turtles and traditional ninja weapons a while ago, and now they're whipping out MP40s. Right? Is that what they're called? And so I find that hilarious. But no, really good splash page again. They're fighting the Foot a lot again. Really straightforward. They come back to New York. They know where the Foot are now. They're going after the Foot. What more of a story can you want? How is book 3 going to be different? Well, we don't know yet. Here, really good shots of Zog. Again, this like all these little panels, not a whole lot of breathing room, I think really disrupts it for me. I think individually they work really good. I love this panel right here. But these 3, they're so it's. I think if it didn't have that such harsh black background, it would work really well. But since they're such darkly shaded too, and it has that just pure black background, it really, really hurts it to me, and it really makes it a lot harder to read as a viewer. Your values need to be a little bit different, I feel like. And I wonder if there's a color classic of this where that's a because they did the color classics, and I wonder how the color, if they made one of this, looks on these 2 pages. Maybe color is what you need on Zog to help break it up. And poor Zog's getting ate up. He is getting shot. His crown that a triceratops has is getting literally blown apart, and that's gotta hurt. He's blood's coming out. He is this is his swan song. And as a first time reader 4 years ago, I was like, "No, Zog, don't die. I love you. You're so cool." Because I didn't know triceratons were a thing. And then it was like, oh my god, there's giant walking triceratops monsters in Ninja Turtles. That's awesome. I want to read it now. But no, it's the Foot Clan are still fighting, and now Zog sees Shredder. This ain't gonna end well, right? But what a great little pose. I love that. Poor animal, just slowly dying, but not slowly for long, because he gets ate up. And probably one of my favorite, might be my favorite page right here, is just Zog getting cut up. And I love the expression of the face. I love just the panel works a little weak for me, but the that silhouette, I don't know why I enjoy it so much. I think it's just the shading actually works for me here, not the panels themselves. If it was just this page without the panels, I think I would enjoy it more, but I still enjoy it a lot. Like I said, it's probably my favorite page in the book. The the turtles get there. They're actually sad that he died. They say poor creature. It it's sad. But they're not gonna waste any time because you know what? Boom, the Shredder clones, and here's a really good shading, right? I this maybe this was the last page they did, and we did get to see Eric Talbot grow as a inker. I definitely could see that, right? There's not as much zipatone, or I guess there is still a lot, but the shading or the raw ink that they threw on it, I think they learned how to mix that better than with Zog. Because Zog, I feel like he didn't have that knowledge yet, whereas here it definitely works. Um, I'm sure there's going to be someone in the comments saying, "You effing idiot, you." Blah, 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 blah. I'm not the end all be all for comics. I'm never going to say I am. That's just my opinion on this book. Still love it. Like I said, Eric Talbot's a great artist. I'm not saying he's not a great, but inking wise really threw me off on this reread. And I think that's more important than anything is, seeing what I like, seeing what I don't like. What can I implement in my books? What am I not going to implement in my books? So there you go, with Zipatone, I really gotta watch how I shade stuff once I get to practicing. And I'm sure when I start working with Zipatone too, it's gonna look really, really bad. So there was our look at Return to New York 2. It's got some cool ads in it as well. It's got Gizmo the Fugitoid, ad for Ninja Turtles number 22. Richard Corbin's Den. If you don't know Richard Corbin, phenomenal artist. Really, really pervy artist. The Puma Blues by not Mazzucchelli, but Zuli, who also worked on some turtle books, Winter's Soul or Winter's Soul's Winter, something like that. We looked at it on the channel. Really cool artist. Puma Blues is really cool too. Check that out. And something I definitely have to look out for, Commandosaurus mini comic number 1, but Peter Laird and Stephen Bissett. I can't find this on eBay anywhere. If you have a copy, I'm putting $100 bounty on it. If you have, now I need pictures. Put it on eBay or do something. DM me on Instagram. My Instagram will be in the description. I want this book. I love Stephen Bissett. He draws dinosaurs amazingly. There's my $100 bounty, and it's only a mini comic, so you're probably getting some bang for your buck there. But yeah, there was Return to New York Book 3. If you've made it to the end of this video, thank you. We couldn't do more videos without the support of people like you. We have a video in the works right now. Me and my co-host Dylan, my best friend Dylan, we review Ninja Turtles number 1. It'll be at the end of this month. It is over 2 hours long. It is the longest video on this channel by probably an hour, and it went amazing. We really talked about the inspiration of the Turtles on Eastman and Laird on us. So definitely check it out. I'm editing it right now. It was real official. We did Zoom and everything. So definitely keep an eye out for that one. We'll make a big deal about it because we put in a lot of work for it. We put in a lot of work on this channel. I know he's working on some videos right now. I know I'm working on videos. I apologize for being late on a couple videos. We're going to nip that in the bud pretty quick. It's just the 4th of July happened. A lot of stuff happened. But hopefully we can be back to a pretty regular scheduling for this. But definitely stick around. If you're new to the channel, thank you. And I'm going to send you on some marching orders. I'm probably going to go make another video. Make more art.